has been adapting for years. I mean, he was allied with ISIS at a time when that was politically convenient for him. That was the way to survive in Syria at that time. He then detached himself from ISIS just at the right point. Then he was with Al-Qaeda. Then he detached himself from them. I think he's been reading the politics of the region. He's very, very politically astute. I think it's pretty certain that he does not want to lead this country in a jihadist direction. He does not want Syria to be a new Taliban. He has said, and I think he means it, that he wants good relations with all his neighbors. And that was a striking thing to say, because one of his neighbors is Israel, and he doesn't want a war. I think that's because he knows the country now is so weak. After the civil war in Syria and then the sanctions, which really brought the Assad regime to the point of total bankruptcy and starvation for many of its people, Syria is still under American and to some degree European sanctions. It's got nothing. I mean, the people in Syria are too exhausted for another war. And I think what Shara understands is that he has to rebuild the country no matter what he wants to do in the future. He may well take a stronger stance against Israel at some point, but for the moment, he has to keep the country together just in order to get the economy going again.
And he's talking about moving from beyond a revolutionary mindset, which can topple a regime but can't rebuild a state. So how was he radicalized in the first place? You're right that he grew up in a pretty wealthy neighborhood in Damascus. He was considered a studious and shy boy when he was in school. He became more radical, I think, at the age of 19. How did he become radicalized? And just, I'll repeat that he founded the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, he became radicalized at a time when those are the winds blowing through the region. It was around the time of the Second Intifada in Palestine. It was the time of the American invasion of Iraq. There were lots of radical preachers in Syria. One of the strange things about Syria at that time was that the Assad regime was ostensibly secular and very much against political Islam. But once it became clear the United States was going to invade, the Syrian regime under the table was making use of these radical figures, encouraging them so that they could then take these young jihadists and send them over the border to destroy the American project. And Ahmed al-Shara did hear some of these preachers, and it seems he, like many other young men, was excited by the possibility of going and fighting the imperialist invader next door. It seems the first time he went, he had a bad experience, ended up back home, but he went back again and joined the resistance. He ended up in an American prison, which these American prisons in Iraq function in a way as some training academies for young jihadists. They got to know each other. They learned, what you learn in prison, which is how to be patient and build networks. And he did that. And not long after he got out, he joined Al-Qaeda. He became the leader of Nusra, which was the Al-Qaeda-linked group in Syria. He moved with the help of Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, from Iraq to Syria. And he built up the group in Syria, eventually detached himself from Baghdadi, who wanted very much for Shara to be under Baghdadi's thumb. But as I mentioned earlier, Shara was an ambitious guy, wanted to run his own show, and he was more astute than Baghdadi. He saw that there was no future in this caliphate, that it was going to get destroyed by American bombs, and then sure enough it was. And then Shara moved on to Idlib in the far northwest corner of Syria, and he was a leader of a movement there that originally was a jihadist movement, but again, he read the political winds. He knew he had to keep in a good relationship with Turkey, which was the benefactor of everything that was going on in that part of it. It was the opposition, the one opposition part of Syria that was not controlled by the Assad regime. And what he did over the years was to moderate, very successfully. He got rid of the most dangerous jihadist groups, either killed them or forced them out. He created an academy to train his own jihadists and impose some discipline on them. And he created a measure of law and order, even a measure of tolerance. People could, by 2020 and a little bit after, people could actually criticize, and they did publicly, his regime in Idlib. And instead of killing them, he would listen to them, and they had a hall of grievances for listening to criticisms and responding to them.
So, you raised the question, in your article, like, who do you believe, the former terrorist or the moderating force? Because al-Shabaab embodies both. But your observation seems to be that he really did moderate, and maybe it's just because he wants power and he's being a pragmatist. But the fact is that he moderated. What are the signs of that you see now in Syria?